Hello and welcome to LetsTok, the podcast for human skills and mindset. Today, I'm in conversation with Gaurav Agarwal. He is a senior vice president at Avanade for the global cybersecurity practice. Gaurav, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sarah, for inviting me and hosting me for Let's Talk.
Yeah, and thank you so much for providing this opportunity to talk to you. I know that you have a busy schedule, so really appreciate your time on this.
Pleasure is all mine. Looking forward to the conversation.
Sure. So, for the people who do not know about you, would you like to give a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. As you said, I'm Gaurav, based out of Seattle. Currently, I'm driving cybersecurity business for Avanade in the context of cloud, app, and data security. But before that, I've built my career across product companies. So I've been part of Microsoft for 13 years. And before that, I've been to consulting domain with system integrators, couple of those in banking domain and respect to working out of India. So I've worked in different continents. So I've built my career around working in India, UK, North America, Singapore. I've seen different portion, different cultures. Primarily somebody who started with C++ development. So I've seen software engineering in depth, then moved to database platforms, done some of the largest complex project that you would ever see on SQL Server, and then shifted to cloud at the launch of it, done partner ecosystem development for Microsoft for entire cloud platforms. And then I shifted to saying, hey, enough of developing practices, enough of developing partners and things like that. Let's deploy the solution in cloud. And that's where the switch over to Avanade. After doing all that in cloud, I said, what's the biggest blocker that customers see when they're looking at cloud adoption? And definitely after the skill set for cloud, the second biggest thing was security as a blocker. And I said, let's take a plunge. Let's try and convert what I've learned in my journey to convert security as a blocker into something security as a catalyst, so that adoption in cloud can happen faster if you address the security concerns upfront. So that's what I do now to work with our clients, providing them the security footprint so that they feel comfortable moving to cloud, both in terms of journey to cloud and journey in cloud.
Awesome. So, what you just mentioned, let's try to unwrap a bit maybe the starting of your journey. So I went through some of your background in terms of the education. It seems that you are pretty decorated in terms of you've been to different colleges, Stanford and Oxford, and did some of the education over there. However, you started with the economics. So how that move from economics to right now dealing with creating projects in cybersecurity, how that transformation basically goes where? Maybe just help us out through that journey.
No, good question. Now, definitely, I get that question asked very, very frequently, both internally in organization and in any of other external conversation. See, fundamentally, I was a science student, and something happened. I said, I don't want to be an engineer. I don't want to be a medical doctor. I said, let's do something different. And I started getting into computer field. Within 3 months, I landed a job. Not what 18 years. I landed a job with a computer science institute in India. And that's why I said, hey, this is exciting enough field, but I needed to be a graduate so that I can sustain there. And I said, the easiest thing that I can do is to do a graduation with history and economics. I had nothing to do with that side of the things, but definitely it helped, because what I learned as part of doing majors in economics helps me in converting what I learned on technology side to solve business problem. So the aptitude that I had using mathematics to solve complex problem economics helped me in understanding the business side of the things, and that probably helped me in becoming growing a little bit differently. Instead of just being a software engineer, I could quickly pivot into business leadership roles. So I continue to do software engineering. How do I apply security as part of that role now? But applying business, what I learned in terms of economics there made me more a better business leader. So it's a mixed journey. It's like you had a solid background on mathematics, software engineering is an easier way to take that path. But how do you solve a business problem? I think that's where economics helped. Now, during a journey, definitely, it's like it's a pyramid. Some point of time, you are competing with a computer science engineer or postgraduates and things like that. So I had two choices: take a break, go back and get a concrete degree in computer science or data science or whatever you want to do. I took a different path. I said, hey, I don't want to take a break. Let me do whatever in parallel I could do. So I started doing two things. One, I said, I need something new to learn every couple of months. But how do you validate what you are learning? Either you are fortunate to get a project where you could dirty your hands and do something, or you could take a path wherein you could get a plunge and say, let me get certified, and rely on saying, hey, I've learned something, here is my certification, and you end up with a project. Or you might end up as a consultant to that project. So that's where an aspect of every few months, I will go learn something new and validate my skill through a certification. And during that path, I said, hey, certification is just one portion of it, which tells me I know that technology. But there are aspects of technology which are beyond it. That's where I ended up getting onto some of those schools where I said, hey, let's go and do something around with Stanford, wherein I could learn about just not technology, but way more behind it. So when fintech was evolving, I said, hey, but how would fintech fit into some of the businesses that I've been across? How do I convert that knowledge into? That's how I ended up with different schools trying to do those courses. But whole objective was to learn things beyond technology, and then marry what I'm learning from beyond technology to solve problems for our clients. Or how do I convert that into something which helps the organization that I'm part of? So, because it's more about cybersecurity, so when I started looking at cloud adoption, that was my primary job, to go and establish partner ecosystem for Microsoft for public cloud. And every time the first question that you would ask is, hey, how would security work there? Because in my own data center, I feel more secure because I can touch the server, but I manage what I need to do. And that's why I said, hey, this is not going to be successful like this. So I need to learn a little bit more about some of the cybersecurity domain and things like that. And that's where I ended up with Stanford cybersecurity course and said, let me learn a few more things. And came back with that knowledge and said, okay, on the back of it, how do I address the challenges that some of these experts in clouds are talking about? How do I navigate some of the challenges? Or learn using that knowledge in developing new solutions. I think that's a differentiator, that whatever you are learning, are you able to convert that into a business opportunity? So let's say, for example, it's like you learn something about, hey, today with quantum computing progressing and everybody talking about, hey, what would happen in a post-quantum world for cryptography things? Yeah, fine, you know the problem set, but how do you convert into a monetizable solution? That can you do something around today? Because as part of my role, I'm here to develop a system integration business. So how do I develop a solution which says, if customer is worried about post-quantum world, is there an assessment that we could do? Is there a way in which we could build a solution which is future-proof with respect to those encryptions? And that's where some of those economics helps, some of those schools helps with respect to, one, building a network wherein you are able to catch up with the trends which are happening today and some of the trends which would probably materialize with respect to next 24 months, 36 months. So trying to use, let's say, another thing that happens is pick up, let's say, a Gartner hype cycle. Everyone focuses on what is in the center of it or whatever is curving down. Whatever is curving down, I would just ignore it because that becomes business as usual. I would look at what is on that curve up or what is just about in the center, because that's where you have to shape your business. That's where you could create a larger business impact. That's how I've built my career, which I feel happy about, that I'm able to keep myself updated, move the things. Is like once you establish something, move to something else. That's what I love. I need a new business challenge. I need a new technology challenge to keep myself motivated enough.
That's great. So what I have understood so far is whatever you learn today, try to implement for tomorrow's technology and then keep on progressing. As you mentioned that it seems like you are a lifelong student. So in order to keep up on a personal level to a new challenge and understand the business priorities, you are trying to learn new things. Like I think in you have done courses around the artificial intelligence, you did in cybersecurity, to understand what is the current trend and then try to implement it in your business. I think that is the overall. I mean, you just keep on learning and try to evaluating and try to be a visionary, not only focusing on why, but also how, because you're trying to implement those things in your core business.
I think you summarized it way better than what I took a longer answer to. But yes, that lifelong learning is part of it. And I strongly believe that it's all about learning never stops. The way people say change is constant, learning also has to be constant for us to be relevant in the business.
Exactly. And I think this is something which resonates to me as well, because I think when you think that you have learned it all, uh, then they are all rippling effect on that, right? I mean, you stop learning, then maybe you stop listening, and you stop listening, then you may not be communicating. And without communication, human being is just like, I mean, I don't know how do I compare. Communication is one of my life philosophies. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. Obviously positive communication everyone likes. For example, in customer scenario as well, if you are not reaching or if you do not have a message for them, which is, I mean, maybe they are not expecting, still communicate, because sometimes people respect having a constant knowledge update instead of just keeping them in dark. So that being said, as you mentioned that you learn through different colleges, is it something which you also strongly recommend people to go back to school, learn something, or what's your suggestion that maybe you took this path? How would you recommend people who would like to keep on excelling and try to take new challenges? What are the different mediums of learning they might opt as well?
Sure. Good question. Now, so definitely, I took a path where you said learn and so get certified. But within that, one thing which I want to highlight is today technology is changing with such a high pace that there is no way you can learn everything on your own. Your traditional method of learning, where you want to dirty your hand with every damn technology before you say, I know about it, that's not going to work. One of the reasons why I go back to some of those schools is because that's my easiest way to build that network. It's today, if I have to put it in a single term for somebody who wants to start this journey or be on this path, I would say don't fall into a trap of that I need to learn every damn thing myself. It's more important to know somebody who is an expert on a particular area, develop that network, develop that trust relationship, because you would learn way faster from somebody who's a subject matter expert in a particular domain as compared to you trying to learn 20 different things yourself. So for me, the prime reason of going back to the school was to go and figure out a network of people whom I can trust, develop relationship. So today, if would I know what needs to be done? Let's say on quantum cryptography, no. But I know whom I can go back to if I need to, and figure out a commercial construct. If it needs to be a paid consulting in that resource, then that's fine too. And if it could be a relationship of win-win wherein I get somebody's expertise and they get my expertise in return, that's how I have built my knowledge base. So it's just not about going to a school because you want a particular professor to teach you. No, it's about a cohort of those 50 people or 100 people that I am interested in.
Yes, completely agree. So, what are the different? I think you touched upon pretty important network stuff, or I would say a pretty important topic, which I have observed with a lot of leaders talking to them, is that there's there's a finite way to learn in terms of like you have only 24 hours. You and even a president of the United States have 24 hours. So you cannot just learn each and everything and then try to implement by your own. So you need like-minded people or the people who try to complement you in certain way, which you may not know. And at least with these educations, you have more questions and more, I would say, right questions to ask to make sure that you make right decisions. So that being said, you mentioned about the networking and creating a trust relationship. What are the other ways people would cultivate those trust relationship if they are not going to school?
Sure. See, so there are definitely different ways in which you could start building your network. One path I already explained, that you could go back, enroll in a course. Now that course could be with a known school, could be something in your local region and things like that. But more than school, because you can't go back to school because of job pressure and the aspect of 24 hours. How do I find time? The other aspect that works fairly well is carve out some side projects which could be, or how do you create a social impact using technology, or a side project where you are able to help your colleagues or people whom you're able to mentor or coach. Create those side projects where you're able to apply technology in a small baby step or a very small POC, proof of concept. And if you're able to bring in that aspect of let's do it for some NGO, let's do it for some where technology for social good can happen, that's another path that has helped me a lot, both in terms of learning, but also getting a satisfaction of creating that social impact. And in that journey, most of the time I end up finding two perspectives. One, people whom I feel that I can go back and I would start probably, maybe for a duration, I would probably use them as my mentor. Or that as I keep on growing in the business, I think I end up with more different aspect where people want a mentoring time out of it. But every time I go and do any of this side project, I always look for, are there people who would benefit from any of the coaching, mentoring that I could provide them? And that's how you develop the trust relationship. That even if you are out of that project, that relationship will continue for some time. And aspect of all, I would always look for somebody who would get me that reverse mentoring. That probably is the thing that I've started doing in last 10 years, and that's the best way to learn today. So if somebody is already like 20 years, 25 years in industry, I think we need reverse mentoring more to happen. Go and work with somebody who's a college pass out. They can teach you way more than somebody who is 20 years who happens to be your peer. Because the way some of this new generations that think about learning technology or usage of the technology is very, very different.
when you provide coaching or mentoring, it's one-way traffic from your personality perspective. Like you are providing the education, your experience to other people. However, you are not might not gaining anything out of it. I mean, maybe you can have a good network, but in terms of your learning, as you mentioned, that if your foundation is having a lifelong learner or student, then you have to learn it from every walks of life. So, as you mentioned that if there is a Gen Z guy and he has a different perspective, I think you would be curious to know, because as a leader, you have to understand what people are thinking and what motivates them to do a certain things, which translates to the business success as well. So that brings out actually to another question. As you mentioned that you had developed uh, the partner ecosystem, you have developed the Azure overall in Microsoft and partner ecosystem, I think in Avanade. What's your perspective in terms of the challenges bringing a change? For example, a big organizations like Microsoft or Avanade or any other for that matter, if you want to bring a change, it may be complex, it may be tedious, it may be time consuming. Versus if you're talking about a startup, you can quickly change those things around. So, what are the difficulties or challenges as a leader you get, and how you come out of it? That is very valuable in this podcast as well. Like, if you would like to bring a change, what are your core mindset, and what are the maybe a high level steps you would like to do in your organization, which you have learned over the course of your 26 years of experience?
So respect to that aspect of change, I saw that as a biggest challenge when I was tasked to build this cloud ecosystem. Beginning, I thought it should be very obvious that if public cloud is the future, then every system integrator should see that as an opportunity and they should start shifting to that, develop solution, pivot their business. But the fact that you already have an existing business makes you reluctant to adopt any change.
Yes.
And that's what I saw as a challenge, that nobody was questioning that, hey, cloud would not be successful 10 years back. Even that point of time, any business leader that I spoke to always said, hey, this is going to disrupt the business. But am I going to be the one who is going to shift to this cloud bandwagon as a first mover, as a system integrator? Answer used to be no. I said, but why would you do that? I said, I already have $1 billion business that I have made on private cloud by owning it. And all of a sudden you are saying, hey, this business is going to shrink. So let's say the best example people used to give was, hey, by selling a messaging solution, today I get X million dollars. But once you are saying, let's do Office 365 or BPOS, I'm losing 40% of that business. So sometimes the change management is about understanding, is that change going to hurt your existing business? And if it is, the change is going to be way more difficult. Because if change is about pivot to new things, because that's a new opportunity, a net new addition to your business without having an impact on your existing business. That change is easy because then you're just talking about creating a win-win scenario, which is a net new addition. So you don't have to worry about protecting your existing business or how do you rotate to the newer business. But unfortunately, cloud falls into a domain which is always going to eat up your existing business. So you have to strike a balance. So it's just not about creating a win-win with respect to your current business and future business, but you have to strike a balance. And a balance of saying at what speed you are willing to eat your current business. And sometimes it takes time to understand that a cloud is always giving you net new business. It is not. It's true for maybe a technology provider company like Amazon or Microsoft or Google, but it's not true for a system integrator. one definitely part of any change management is you have to create that win-win scenario. Always be able to provide what is in it for the other person. And this person could be individual or this other is could be a business, which I guess is not a rocket science. Everyone understand if you are creating a win-win scenario, that's fantastic. But the other aspect which has helped me is that for is are there ways in which you are able to offset the immediate short-term loss to gain and capture the future market opportunity? So let's say an example that, hey, today there is a new product which is happening. Let's say now if Microsoft starts doing a managed security service solution or a MXDR solution, which would start hitting into a system integrator's business because that's how they have been selling managed security. But is there a future opportunity where a system integrator and a hyperscaler like Microsoft work together to solve a client's challenge? That's where customer is benefiting. So one thing is clear, client would love to have Microsoft and a system integrator working together because they see skin in the game from the technology provider and a service provider. But moment Microsoft is doing that, that means the current business of any system integrator has to take a dip. Some would be willing, if business is smaller, because you have a smaller base, doesn't matter to a startup. So if somebody is just a 50 people company, what would be their managed service business? Maybe $5 million. So you're saying you have a future potential to grow because here is a 100 million opportunity, but you are putting a $5 million business at stake. Versus a large system integrator where their existing business itself could be $500 million, billion plus, whatever that number looks like. And then you are showing a potential opportunity to build additional 200 million business. So obvious question would be, should I protect my current business or go after the future? And that's where you would see hyperscalers bringing in that investment, say, okay, for you to build this new solution, I could bring in some investment, I could bring in some resources. That's also aspect of saying when you're trying to create a win-win scenario, look for who is willing to bring investment in terms of resources, sometimes investment in terms of which makes the cost of this change subsidized for the partner who is acting as somebody who is taking a dip in the current business. And that's where I guess a difference of saying who is able to bring in that investment faster to create that or capture that new business makes a difference. So today, if a Microsoft person asks me, what can we do to move faster into this cloud domain? I would say, go work, come bring in the investment where we could offset some of the current losses or offset the cost of the new solution built. It's not that we don't know that future of business is moving towards a different direction, but we do have a business challenge to protect the current business too.
Yeah. So what you mentioned, to summarize, is first of all, you have to create a win-win situation. And in order to create a win-win situation, you have to really get into the depth of what the other party is looking for as well. As you mentioned that sometimes when you have to grow a business like cloud business, you have to take a dip on the existing business, and if everything is working fine, you will get more, I would say, a friction in terms of accepting your proposals. Like,
Yeah.
why would you do that, even if people would like to agree that this may be a disruptive technology? So try to create a win-win situation, which only happens, again, going back to your basics, have insightful listenings, be curious, try to ask more questions, and then try to brainstorm more to find some kind of
Yes.
middle ground.
That's a good summary. But within that conversation, I think one piece which got missed, which I probably not didn't highlight enough, is if the new opportunity is not going to benefit the mutual customer, then we are not creating in a win-win scenario. Because at the end of a day, whether it is cloud provider or system integrator, we make money if it is providing a business value to our client. So sometimes we end up with a business case which says, if you're going to lose some business or this new solution is going to require $2 million to build it, and 50% you bring, 50% my stock bring. That's fine. It's like you figured out how to find that $2 million to build that new solution. But what benefit the end client is going to get out of that new solution? If you don't have visibility to that value proposition for the client, then any of this investment or this win-win scenario between SI and a hyperscaler is not going to benefit. So when you're looking at creating that win-win scenario, it's like win-win for SI, hyperscaler, but it should be a win-win for customer too. Because if otherwise, customer is going to just come back and say, enough of having a solution of private cloud, enough of my listening to Microsoft or public cloud, because that's what we want to sell. Let me do something different because my business is different. So you have to figure out the value proposition for client. So don't miss that pivot of it has to have a value for the client, which is going to define the success of win-win business case that we built.
Got it. So in this whole operations, it's pretty obvious that not every time the tide turns towards you. There's always a possibility that irrespective of doing everything, reaching out to vendors, reaching out to the customers, convincing your internal team, things didn't work out and it doesn't go as expected. Mm-hmm. In those cases, as a leader, what is your next step in terms, or what you educate people? Like some people may dishearten or demoralize or just move on to another things. Some people really believe in and they need a next step. So in that perspective, what's your suggestion when things are really against you?
Sure, good question. I can answer that in two different ways. Okay, one is the aspect of don't get fear about failures. If you try 10 things, you're bound to fail on 3 or 4. But that failure is going to give you a learning. So what I prefer is identify your risk and have a mechanism in which you could fail fast or succeed fast. And don't delay your decision. If you see something is not going right, you should be able to create that psychologically safe environment to fail fast. Document the learning and move on. Don't have heartburns with respect to, hey, I wasted $100,000, $500,000. Feel happy that you learned something and you're able to fail fast. But during that, I think the most important thing is creating that psychologically safe environment where people can celebrate even the failure. And the other aspect is, whatever said and done, nobody likes a failure. Only way you could avoid that is, again, coming back to a network or try and correlation with something similar that you tried. Because if nothing else, you can even test your business case. You can test or validate whatever new that you're trying to build. And instead of trying different scientific mechanism, what I prefer doing is identify 1 or 2 anchor customer upfront. So even while I'm building a new solution, I would always go back to that anchor customer and start learning live in a commercial construct, which doesn't hurt customer, which doesn't hurt us a lot. But don't build something sitting in your silos. Always have that customer, that anchor customer upfront, because your maximum learning would happen there. And your first anchor customer, even if it doesn't give you any dollar as part of a sales process, but you would have your first success story once you have developed it. That's what I do. It's like I would always have an anchor customer upfront.
Got it. Yeah. So as you mentioned that it's more towards take a calculated risk and then try to celebrate failures as well, try to learn, and then maybe in subsequent hops, you have learned that lot that your chances of failures will be going down, right? The probability of something fail is substantially go down because you have a certain kind of experience. And I think you also mentioned about maybe sometimes we have to go directly to the customers and reverse engineer that whatever we are making, whatever the vision is really something on track, or maybe we are just going to achieve something which maybe customers say it doesn't matter to me. It's right, but it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Cool. So that brings to the towards the end of the part of the podcast is for the people who are developing leaders. Now there are two kind of leaders: the leaders who develop, create things, and try to disrupt whether it's a technology, whether it's two different initiatives, and then there are leaders who are a kind of a driving people together, like in the people management and all. Whatever they decide, what are the core values or things you look for? Or maybe I would say that maybe you try to interview people and all. What are the core things you look for that, okay, this is something, whether he fits in to your requirement or not, but he or she would be a great leader from here?
Sure. Great question. See, definitely there are obviously two choices that people make as they are on this leadership journey. They take a path where you become a creator or a visionary, or you end up taking a path which is more people management kind of a thing. But irrespective on both path, what matters is, are you bringing in the leadership qualities where you develop active listening? As active listening, irrespective of path, you need to have that. Other core characteristic is the aspect of empathy, which I would say this hybrid work or remote work brought it more highlighted, that how are you able to bring in that empathetic aspect into every conversation that you do. The third thing, which is more important, is being transparent. Are you able to bring in transparency in your conversation? And if you have those three, then it is about, based on the role that you are looking for, is there a fitment? Is there a experience, a similar experience that you bring in? And when I'm saying similar experience, it's not about somebody who's doing a very similar role for what you are hiring for. Because if you hire somebody who's already doing a role similar to what you are hiring for, you're asking for disaster, because after 6 months, you'll not be able to keep that resource happy. So look for the potential. But how do you validate a potential in a leader? I would say look for how somebody reacted to a failure. What did they learn? If they have to redo things, are they able to demonstrate and say, if they have to redo something that they feel proud about, or if they have to redo what they failed on, how transparent they are they able to apply the learnings into something new? And look for the culture fitment of your organization with respect to, if you are an organization which is more about working together, or you are an organization where you are going to throw a person in the pond and let's see if that person can swim. So you have to figure out what kind of a culture you are, and then look at what that resource is about. But typically I would say, for me, what is most important is, do you have an active living skill? Are you transparent enough? And do you have a vision to grow that business? Because at least in my role, that's what I'm looking for. That somebody who has a futuristic view instead of just keep the lights on. Because you can always find people who can keep the lights on, continue the business the way it is, versus people who are able to bring in a vision and say, this is how the future of business is going to look like. So look for people who bring in that vision, transparency, and that aspect of active listening. That's what I'm looking for if I'm having that conversation for any leadership role.
That's great. So to summarize, active listening skills, being transparent, having empathy, and obviously having a vision is the core things which you look for a person who would be maybe a future leader or existing leader in the organization. How people can reach out to you for any kind of assistance. Again, it depends on what you look for, but what would be the different ways people can reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. I would say I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. So the best way, if somebody wants to reach out, probably reach out to me through LinkedIn. Or I do run my own small website, the Architect Coach. So that could be another mechanism. So either LinkedIn or the architectcoach.com is the easiest way to reach me out.
Got it. And we will put this as a bottom in the show notes so that people can go through the website and the LinkedIn URL as well. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best for the future endeavors.
Yeah, thanks, Saurabh, and thanks for hosting me. And I hope this helps your series and people who listen to it. So yeah, good conversation. Thanks for hosting me.
Sure. Thank you so much.